You're listening to Where We Are, a weekend conversation on faith, politics, family, and culture, hosted by me, Michael Ware, and my wife, Melissa. We bring our wide-ranging experiences in politics, ministry, and nonprofit life to bear as we discuss the issues of the day. On this week's episode, we'll be updating our GOP primary rankings, talking about the debate, and giving you an update on the Center for Christianity and Public Life's inaugural summit that took place this last week. And, of course, pasta rankings. You're listening to Where We Are. You're listening to Where We Are. We are the Wares. I'm Michael.
I'm Melissa.
And Melissa, we made it through like the busiest season of the year.
We made it through.
We made it through, and we're still married.
Still married. Grizzled.
It's like the Revenant up in here.
You just find me cocooned inside of a horse.
But we wrapped up the first class of the Center for Christianity and Public Life's Public Life Fellows.
Yeah, they're all really cool.
They're
cool people.
amazing people. We wrapped up that class. Now, thankfully, we have an alumni program, and these folks are hopefully going to be a part of the life of CCPL moving forward. But there is still a kind of the 9-month program is over. A little melancholy.
A little bittersweetness.
And then they stayed through. All of our fellows had a speaking role at our inaugural summit, which was amazing.
It turned out really well. I mean, you're a team of 3, and you pulled off an entire summit.
It was great. We had an amazing event coordinator. Shout out Whitney Tran, who's like the best ever.
Yeah, she's really talented.
She's exceptional. But summit was amazing. 35 plus speakers. Senate Chaplain Barry Black, 2 United States Senators, Gary Haugen of IJM, Pulitzer Prize finalist Elizabeth Brunig, the Washington Post Christine Emba, Reverend Eugene Cho of Bread for the World, Michael Sakasis over at the Christian Study Center in Gainesville. I mean, just could go. Jason DeParle at the New York Times, Ann Filippic of Share Our Strength. I mean, it was so
USAID
wonderful.
Administrator Samantha Power sent out a video.
She did.
Naming CCPL. It was awesome.
It was great.
I love her. She's my shiro.
Yeah. It was exceptional. And so for those of you who are there, I'm so glad that you took the time. We will hopefully be making an announcement soon regarding when the 2024 summit will be. And so no promises there except for that there will be an announcement hopefully by the end of the year. But I'll tell you, there were some amazing talks. Mm-hmm. Senator Chris Murphy of Connecticut.
Yes.
He brought it.
Yeah, he was excited about being there. And he brought a fully thought out, fully fledged speech.
It was, it's the first talk that we have been able to release. You could go to our YouTube channel and see the full speech from Senator Murphy. Let's just say, like, he did not phone it in. I don't agree with every jot and tittle of what he said in the speech, but it was a robust case for the role of churches in addressing and stemming and reversing the crisis of belonging and loneliness that we have. And I think what I heard over and over again, both specifically regarding Senator Murphy's speech, but also the summit generally, was just how refreshing it was. Mm-hmm. How refreshing it was to hear talks that weren't immediately placed in a political binary, mm-hmm. that weren't that weren't motivated by some sort of huge political agenda, but were actually considering Christian resources, what they have to offer to our public life, and issues like child hunger, like AI, that Christians ought to not just care about, but contribute to.
Yeah, the politics that he did in his speech was actually speaking to his own side. He said, I need to speak to progressives with this speech, which speaking to your own side takes a whole other kind of posture and approach and mentality and humility.
Yeah.
It doesn't happen a lot, and it was really refreshing to see him say, I think progressives can do better on this.
Yeah.
Several different times.
Yeah, it was a sounding... Senator Chris Coons was also with us. Similarly, I thought his humility... for those who don't know, Senator Chris Coons is a devout Christian, Yale Div, and a Yale Div grad. He spoke quite movingly about, a lot of times, like, it's easy to be like, I want to reach across the aisle and like, so I worked with Mitt Romney, or like, and that's good. But I like Chris Coons raised some of the more difficult members on the other side of the aisle and how he felt convicted about how he approached and thought about them in a way that I took to be pretty transparent. It's the other interesting thing Coons said was, so Senator Chris Coons is the chair of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, and I thought it was very interesting. Senator Schumer called him earlier that day, and Senator Coons told Schumer that he was taking a walk and praying when Schumer was asking him about. He didn't say explicitly. I had to imagine it was related to Israel or Ukraine, and so that was really moving set of remarks. So we will be releasing content from the summit to some extent in the coming weeks, in the coming months. We're going to have a recap video that'll be up early next week. I'm excited about that. But yeah, it was really wonderful. And for those who were able to be with us there in person, I'm so glad you were. And so, Melissa, now it's like the book seems so far away, but now that we're past the summit, like the spirit of our politics comes out in like 2 months. So it's just feels like another stretch there, but I'm excited. I'm ready for this book to come out now.
Yeah, me too. And you opened up the conference, the summit, with a lot of fodder from your book, and I kept on getting reactions from people saying, does Michael say this anywhere else? Is this recorded? What he said was so good. And I was like, actually, I felt like a little marketing gimmick going, it's actually all from his book, just so you're aware. So you were getting amazing feedback. And I'm just so ready for everybody to finally read this thing that we've been talking about ad nauseum for months.
Yeah. I'm excited.
It's coming so soon.
It's coming very soon. And I have a bunch of speaking confirmed that we just haven't put on the calendar yet, and so we'll be on the website, and so that'll be exciting to let folks know when I'm going to be in their neck of the woods. But California, Illinois, Richmond, Virginia, Baltimore, D.C., Nashville, Austin. So I'm going to be sort of all over the country early next year. All right. Well, hey, let's jump. So right after the summit, we had a Republican debate.
Yeah, we watched 5 candidates on stage.
5 candidates on stage. So it was Christie, Tim Scott, Senator Tim Scott, Vivek, DeSantis, and Haley.
That's right.
And then, of course, Donald Trump, the front runner, was not there, and so honestly, I don't feel like a debate recap is necessarily worthwhile. I mean, the debate was interesting in that basically the first hour was focused on foreign policy.
Yes, which isn't surprising.
Which Well, isn't surprising given everything
our
that's
times.
happening in the news. Still, it's a lot of foreign policy for a primary.
It's a lot of foreign policy when most folks aren't. I mean, quite a few folks vote
I think
on
now more people are
vote on
tuned
national
in, yeah.
security, especially when foreign policy is presented more as national security. You get people who vote in a higher percentage on that issue. I think it could possibly be there at the top of Iowans' minds when they're caucusing this January. But I think you noticed immediately, I noticed immediately that once again, we had 5 candidates on stage with one candidate choosing not to attend for a third time who is just running away with the numbers in the polling still. And he wasn't a topic for those candidates to say, hey, here's my best case for why I'm better than that front runner. And it's just, I continue to be baffled.
Yep. Now, so I'll say, I mean, I wrote and I said that I thought this debate, it was an important one for turning attention towards Trump. And, they didn't do that. I mean, I guess compared to like the first debate, I bet you there was an increase of mentions, but it still wasn't the focus, to be sure. I think the alternative argument is, these campaigns are looking at the fact that there are going to be a number of additional debates before Iowa even votes. And so for them, I think there is just a real hesitancy to sort of use whatever they have against Trump before, whatever arguments they want to make before the field winnows further. We've obviously seen significant winnowing even since the last debate. We only had 5 candidates on the debate stage. I think it's an interesting question whether we may see further winnowing before the next debate on, I think it's December 6th.
Yeah, it's December 6th, and it's in Miami.
And so,
sorry. This last one was in Miami.
Yeah.
Sorry, Alabama.
Yeah, Tuscaloosa, Alabama. And so, they are. It is sort of for me getting to the point of waiting for a shoe to drop, but you're the shoe. Like Nikki Haley, Ron DeSantis, you're the shoe that needs to drop. And so I guess we'll just wait and see if December 6th is the moment, or a debate in January. But like, they can't just turn the conversation to Trump 3 weeks out from Iowa.
No, that's what I'm saying.
This needs time, and you need to give voters time. It's not fair to voters to just give them 2-3 weeks to process, something approximating like a holistic argument. And so, but Trump is, again, 20, 30, 40, 45 points ahead nationally. He's 20, 25, 30 points ahead in Iowa. And so, but let's turn to the rankings, and that'll give us a bit of an opportunity to, maybe bring up some more from the debate, and also sort of set sort of where we are. I think. Yeah.
So how many did you rank this month?
6.
6. Okay.
Yeah, I did
You've
6.
ranked 6. That makes sense.
Yeah, I did 6. At the bottom, Christie.
Yep.
I think he could be ranked higher if he was showing up as, the number 2 in New Hampshire.
Yeah.
Which is what he seems to be, really like, running hard in New Hampshire, but it seems like Haley's overtaking the moderate sort of lane.
It seems like it.
And so because of that, it would still be a long shot anyways, but because Haley is sort of taking over the moderate wing, it really doesn't seem Christie has a path in this race. His role is what we've always thought his role is, which is to be the one on the debate stage willing to mention Trump's name. And willing to lay out the sort of prosecutorial argument about just how bad Trump's legal troubles are, but have to put Christie at the back of the pack on this one. Number 5, Tim Scott. And I think Scott's a good example of a candidate who had a vision for running.
Yep, a strong launch.
And had a first layer of an argument that was able to gain like some traction. But presidential campaigns are stories, and he sort of ran out of story to tell.
Yeah.
He sort of only had an opening chapter, and the story of his candidacy didn't really deepen. And so I'm getting pretty close to counting him out, given everything we've discussed on this podcast about the fact that, there's this race between him and Nikki Haley, and it just really seems like Nikki Haley is going to win that race. I think the thing that troubles me is Scott seems intent on hurting Haley on his way out.
Yeah.
Which, Haley took so much fire in the second debate, not just from Vivek, but DeSantis, from Scott. And again, it's just like she's pulling like a high of 15% nationally. Well, no, I'm sorry. That's like I think she got a 18 in Iowa in one
you're
poll.
Thinking more
but
Iowa,
nationally, there may have been a poll or two where she broke double digits, but really, I mean, I just saw in the most recent she had like 5 nationally, and so it's like that's a lot of fire to be training on someone who's at 5, and just this idea that they're all going to take down the number 2 and hope that the number 2 candidate is then able to prosecute a case against Trump. Well, it's going to be really hard to prosecute a case against Trump if you fractured the non-Trump vote against, against all these candidates. But of course, they don't care. They're all thinking in terms of self-interest and just can they be the Trump alternative? And you're seeing the race now very clearly sort of look like that. And so I think Scott is an odd man out on this one. Especially because it would be interesting if he decided for him to be relevant that he was going to take a more frontal approach to Trump, but he hasn't shown any willingness to do that. And so I have Trump at 5. I have Vivek at 4.
Okay. Why at 4?
I think he has a low ceiling.
Agreed. Yes.
I think he has a low ceiling. And it's just, I think Iowa and New Hampshire are just not gonna go for him. And so yeah, I just don't see it. And I think he's lost.
I can see that, especially in Iowa with caucusing and with the discussions that happened during a caucus.
No, I just feel like...
And then New Hampshire is heavily influenced by what Iowa does.
Right, like the counter-argument to, the voters in Iowa and New Hampshire are too serious for this is like, well, Trump emerged out of primary. Yeah. But I think because Trump is taking up so much of the disruption...
The ridiculousness.
Energy. Yeah. That, I can't see Vivek finding his own way. So Vivek at 4. Number 3, I'm going to have DeSantis.
Okay. Another month.
Now, folks, you may recognize, I think you'll be able to guess who number 2 and number 1 are. Youngkin has dropped off the list. We named Youngkin last month. Governor Youngkin, I think...
Of Virginia.
Of Virginia, I think had the right idea, which is that if Republicans were able to win back the state legislature this past Tuesday on Election Day, then that would have been such a strong message that maybe you ride that momentum in and you announce late. But the reason why it would have been such momentum is because it was really hard to do. And not only did he not do it, but he lost the entire state legislature. So now the entire state legislature in Virginia is Democratic. And so he'll have his own challenges in Virginia.
That's right.
Now, it will be interesting to see, is he able to make some deals? And does he set himself up for 2028 potentially? But 2024 seems pretty clear he's not gonna jump in. But so number 3, I have DeSantis.
Now why?
I thought he was much better. I thought he actually had a pretty good debate performance.
He had a good debate last month too.
But you just look at the trajectory, and it's he's been falling in the polling. Hallie has been rising. I think I might put DeSantis in 2 if he had a clear edge in Iowa. But actually, all the Iowa polling from this month shows him and Haley running neck and neck.
Yep.
And so, again, you do, this is the scenario, right? Haley gets a surprise second in Iowa. Mm-hmm. At least at this point, I think I'd say that it would be a surprise, just given how much time Scott and DeSantis have spent in the state.
Yes.
If Haley gets second in Iowa, it's very possible DeSantis drops out. Because I don't think DeSantis is really banking on New Hampshire.
Yeah,
and he's not running very strong in New Hampshire.
No, I mean, there have been stories over about 3 weeks ago that DeSantis, when he looked at his money again, that he put a ton of staff into Iowa. So clearly, he's putting a lot of his eggs in the Iowa basket.
Yeah, because you got to think about it. If Haley wins number 2 in Iowa, she'll ride that momentum into New Hampshire, where she's already doing pretty well.
Yes.
So she's likely to get second place in New Hampshire as well. Yep. And then South Carolina's on the horizon. So, she has a clear 1, 2, 3 punch.
Mm-hmm.
And then maybe she is able to ride that into being a real contender for delegates on Super Tuesday. And then who knows what happens from there. But DeSantis, even if he gets second in Iowa, Haley could say, "Look, I knew Iowa wasn't going to be for me." Mm-hmm. She potentially gets second in New Hampshire, and then South Carolina, is an interesting state. Now, what I don't know, and honestly, I think the record of Nevada, having a strong influence on these contests is actually pretty limited. Nevada hasn't really been as influential as as Iowa, New Hampshire. Like we just haven't seen swings take place on the basis of what happens in what happens in Nevada. So that's why I have Haley number 2, because I see a clearer path to Haley being the Trump alternative than even DeSantis at this point. Even though DeSantis continues to poll more strongly nationally, I think that sort of gets solved if Haley does well in Iowa, New Hampshire, and South Carolina.
Well, I saw a story about a week ago. It was last weekend. Trump and DeSantis went to the same Florida event, and there were multiple reports coming out about how popular Trump was there. And less popular DeSantis was and that he kind of flopped with his speech versus Trump and the reception and the sort of murmurings go around. And I thought to myself last weekend, that is not a good sign at all for DeSantis and his team if in Florida that is the kind of reception that he is getting in his home state. With obviously, you know, Trump is popular in Florida. That's a given. But his own state. The only other thing that I would say is that Governor Kim Reynolds just last week,
correct,
endorsed DeSantis.
Right.
Does she have an effect on that caucus at all, or do you think it's pretty minimal?
No, I mean, there's a real advantage there. I mean, I think it is an indication of just how all in DeSantis is
in Iowa. Okay.
That
Yeah.
he sort of, and right, like if he was in a strong position in Iowa, then you'd almost want to hold that endorsement back for a final push of momentum in, you know, late January or or I'm sorry, in early January. But the fact that he rolled it out now seemed to me almost like he needs to stay in the conversation and not let Haley completely sort of take over. And so now there's this reason to stay in at least through Iowa for him, which is that the governor supports him. No, I think it's an interesting decision for Kim Reynolds to use that capital to endorse someone whose campaign is foundering. But that's, frankly, I don't know enough about her politics and sort of the dynamics there.
So you've got Trump at number one. What would you say in terms of where he's at mid-November with the first voting January 15th in the Iowa caucuses? What could propel him further, and what do you think could bring him down?
I think the most the way he gets taken down is Haley completely clears the field after South Carolina at the latest, and the legal news, it becomes much clearer to Republican primary voters, even if they think that it's all cooked up and it's Democratic cases or whatever, Democratic judges and whatever. It becomes clear in the run-up to Super Tuesday how compromised Trump is as a standard bearer for the Republican Party, and Haley becomes the beneficiary of that. I think that's most likely scenario, you know, at this point. Now, I have to say, like, I expect things to be relatively volatile over the next 2-3 months. So, you know, we could do, you know, once we get into January, we could do a ranking every week, and it would be a reasonable thing to do.
We are only promising a month still.
Yes, no, we're definitely only doing a month, but I just mean in terms of
no, I get what
how
you're saying.
much money is going to be spent, how much friction and conflict there's going to be. But sitting here in this place on, you know, November 12th, 2023, that seems to be the most viable way that Trump loses. I think Trump is the heavy favorite to win the nomination. I think that's sort of like an unavoidable thing. As I've said on this podcast before, though, it's imperative that we actually let voters speak into this. It's imperative that we not act like it's a foregone conclusion. No, it'll be a foregone conclusion when we're counting votes. But like, let's let this thing run out.
And with polling having been pretty volatile since 2016.
Yes. And again, you know, Trump is persistently under 50% in Iowa. So let's see how this field narrows. There's a real chance that, like, donors play a key role here, and that donors actually force or not force, but exert pressure so that DeSantis, again, on this trajectory, so that DeSantis drops out. Obviously, if the tables turn, maybe it's Haley who's getting, forced to drop. But we'll see it. We could have we could have an Iowa caucus where there are only four candidates who are actually running, which would be pretty unprecedented. Not unprecedented historically, but certainly if you look at the last 3-4 elections. And so we'll see how this turns out. But Trump is number one in the rankings. And again, until these candidates convince voters that Trump is not a winner, nothing is going to change. And the more that they act afraid of him, the more that they act like they're playing for second, the more Trump looks like a winner. The more it looks like Trump has something that the rest of the candidates don't have. And that is exactly where Trump wants to be. The last thing I'd say, Melissa, we have talked about this before, but the way in which the RNC has structured things to give Trump just an insane advantage in terms of the pledge for the debates, in terms of arranging debate rules in a way that supports Trump. If they were able to add provisions in the debate about or for the debates that you needed to commit to endorsing to supporting the eventual nominee, just think of all the other provisions they could have added if they were actually thoughtful, or if they actually wanted to have a level playing field, or if they didn't want to be sort of neutered by their very own process. It seems to me like a fair provision would be candidates are not allowed to counter-program our own debates.
Yes.
And so, all the rules have been in Trump's favor in pretty profound ways. And I think if Trump is the nominee, and certainly if Trump loses to Joe Biden, there's going to be a lot of focus on the RNC's role in this, and that'll be something to watch.
Yeah, it's that particular scenario where Biden beats Trump for certain. It will be interesting to see what the RNC has to do. The Be the Bridge podcast is a resource from the nonprofit organization Be the Bridge, which was founded in 2016 by best-selling author and leader in the fight for racial justice, Latasha Morrison. Be the Bridge responds to racial brokenness and systemic injustice in our world and believes understanding can move us toward racial healing, racial equity, and racial unity. This podcast is a resource to help cultivate courageous conversations and equip all to flourish, and episodes are released every other Tuesday. So, where would we start as a new listener? Noteworthy episodes include a B2B classic episode with Eugene Cho on politics, episode 251 with Jude 3 Project's Lisa Fields, episode 208, The Responsibility of Faith Leaders to Raise Their Voice and Move into Action with Beth Moore, and of course, episode 257, which features our very own Michael Ware, along with Jenny Yang and Catherine Freeman. It's an excellent episode on navigating tense and challenging political climates and voting. Be the Bridge podcast is a podcast worthy of your time. We hope you check it out. We are so happy to be on the That Sounds Fun network with Latasha and her team. We're gonna end our discussion of the primary there, of the ranking there.
Yeah.
And we're gonna move into pasta rankings. Yeah.
Yeah, let's do pasta rankings real quick. But it's November. It's a good pasta month.
Yeah. So I have designated November soup month. Yes. Yeah. November is soup month. So I have ranked soup pastas. That's what I've done this month. Number 4 is a fun one. I really like it a lot just because of the way that it looks, but also it's really good at catching soup bits. It's radiatori. which it's the kind of pasta that looks like the radiator inside of a car, hence why it's called radiatori. To me, it has always looked like ribs. And I don't know. I just like the way that it looks, but it also catches a lot of bits. The next one is pestina, which is a very, very, very tiny, tiny pasta. And it is just excellent for putting meat on your bones kind of feeling. It's delicious. I mean, it's such an Italian staple to put that with some broth.
With some broth, carrot. I love, some carrot slices. And you'll, if you have a cold, have broth with pestina, and you won't have a cold like 4 hours later.
Yeah. No, that's exactly it. It's such a good remedy for when you're not feeling well. And then shells, but not the big shells, not the uber big shells, but the very little shells.
This is going to be controversial.
Yeah, I know.
But I love them. They're delicious.
They're like little boats that catch the that catch the broth, kind of like the radiatori catches like the bits. And the pestina just kind of soaks up everything. I'm talking about like the little shells. I just love little shells in soup. And so that's number 2. And number 1 this month goes, and I've ranked this a couple of times before, even in the summer, just because I love this tiny pasta so much, and it's ditalini.
Yeah.
It's just for me, it is the quintessential Italian soup staple when you're making like a pasta fazool, which you made about 10 days ago. It was
delicious.
I asked you to make it because you asked me, what do you want to eat this week? And I said, I want to eat pasta fazool. So we made that with some ditalini, and it's just such a good soup pasta when you're eating something with more than just broth, with, a bunch of different bits and bobs in there.
Yeah. I want to add annalini.
This is my ranking.
I'm going to speak into it.
Okay, that's number 5. We have 5 them.
Yeah.
Number 5 is annalini.
So I'm going to add annalini, which is like a stuffed pasta that's served with broth, and I'm a fan of it. And so you could also find them. So they're from Parma, but you could also find them in Piedmont, and they're on the menu pretty regularly there. So that would be my contribution to the
So
list.
annalini are usually filled with beef, like beef meat. I don't know why I just said that's so funny. It's usually filled with beef. That's the kind of meat.
And they're kind of like discs.
Yes,
that's
they're
how
kind of
they
like
often
discs.
look. Yeah.
And then agnolotti, which is also Piemontese. It
kind of more like pouches.
It's pouches,
Yeah.
and it's usually filled with pork. Now what you've done to my ranking is that you've introduced a filled pasta, and next month is filled pasta. So Michael's given you a preview of December, which is the month of filled pasta.
Okay.
Pasta pocket month.
All right. Well, hey, let's land the plane here. Hope you enjoyed the return to sort of normal episodes. I mean,
Yeah.
we've loved having interviews, but we also love just doing episodes.
And we know that you love episodes like this.
Yeah.
Once again, I see the numbers.
All right, friends. Hope you have a wonderful rest of your weekend. Go Bills!
Go Bills!
Play on Monday night, and we'll talk to you for the morning 5, and of course be back with you next week. This has been Where We Are.
Bye.
It's the end of the weekend, but I still wanna turn up. Yeah, I still wanna turn up. All I want is to go.